Have you ever agreed to something, even though every part of you wanted to say no? Maybe someone asked for your help. Maybe someone expected your time. Maybe someone crossed a boundary, and instead of speaking honestly, you smiled and said, "Sure, that's okay." But later, something inside you felt heavy. Not angry, not exactly sad, just drained. And you wondered, why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep saying yes when my heart is saying no? If that question feels familiar, you're not alone. Many people who care deeply about others fall into a quiet pattern called people pleasing. And at first, it doesn't look like a problem. It looks like kindness. It looks like patience. It looks like generosity. You try to be understanding. You try to be supportive. You try to be the person who makes things easier for everyone else. But over time, something strange happens. You start feeling tired in ways that rest doesn't fix. You start feeling responsible for everyone's emotions. You begin carrying pressures that were never meant to belong to you, and sometimes you don't even realize you've lost contact with your own voice. This pattern doesn't usually begin with weakness. It often begins with good intentions. Many people learned early in life that peace was maintained by being agreeable. Maybe conflict in your environment felt uncomfortable. Maybe approval felt important. Maybe being the good one felt like the safest role. So your brain learned something powerful. If I keep others happy, everything will stay calm. That strategy might have helped you once, but in adulthood, it can quietly create emotional exhaustion. Because every time you silence your own needs to maintain someone else's comfort, your inner world becomes a little quieter. And over time, you may start feeling invisible inside your own life. Here is something important to understand. Kindness and people-pleasing are not the same thing. Kindness comes from freedom. People-pleasing comes from pressure. Kindness says, I choose to help. People-pleasing says, I feel like I must. And that small difference changes everything. Even people of deep faith can struggle with this, because faith often teaches compassion, service, patience. But compassion was never meant to erase your identity. Faith does not require you to disappear. In fact, healthy faith strengthens your ability to live with honesty. Not aggression, not selfishness, but truth. There is a powerful difference between loving others and abandoning yourself. One builds relationships, the other builds quiet resentment. So let's pause for a moment. Think about your own life. Are there situations where you automatically say yes before you even check how you actually feel? Do you sometimes feel responsible for keeping everyone comfortable? Do you avoid difficult conversations because you don't want anyone to feel upset? If so, your nervous system may have learned that approval equals safety. And when that happens, saying no can feel surprisingly uncomfortable, not because it is wrong, but because it is unfamiliar. But growth always begins where unfamiliar choices begin. One of the most important emotional skills a person can develop in life is learning the difference between peace and avoidance. At first glance, they can look very similar. Both seem calm, both seem polite, both seem respectful, but inside, they are very different experiences. Peace comes from honesty. Avoidance comes from fear. When we avoid difficult conversations in order to keep everything comfortable, the comfort usually becomes temporary. Because emotions that are never expressed do not disappear. They accumulate, little by little. Conversation after conversation, situation after situation. Until one day you realize something surprising. You are not just tired, you are emotionally exhausted. And the exhaustion is not coming from doing too much. It is coming from not being honest about what you feel. Many people who struggle with people-pleasing begin noticing subtle signals long before they recognize the pattern. Maybe you feel tension when your phone lights up with a message. Maybe you hesitate before answering someone who often asks for favors. Maybe certain conversations make you feel pressure even before they begin. These are not signs that you are selfish. They may simply be signs that your boundaries have slowly disappeared. Healthy boundaries are often misunderstood. They are not walls. They are not rejection. They are not a lack of love. Healthy boundaries are simply clarity. They help people understand where your responsibility ends and where theirs begins. Without that clarity, relationships can become confusing. Because when someone constantly says yes, others begin to assume that yes will always be the answer. Not because they intend harm, but because the pattern has never been interrupted. And this is where emotional maturity begins. The moment you realize that maintaining honesty is not the same as creating conflict. You can care deeply about people and still say, I can't do that right now. You can be compassionate and still say, I need time to think about this. You can love people and still say, that doesn't work for me. Those sentences may feel uncomfortable the first few times you say them, but discomfort is often the doorway to growth. Even faith itself invites this kind of inner honesty. Faith was never meant to erase your voice, it was meant to strengthen it. Throughout Scripture, we see people speaking truthfully, expressing emotion, asking difficult questions, and still walking closely with God. Honesty and faith were never enemies. They were always partners. So let me ask you something simple. What would change in your life if you allowed yourself to pause before automatically saying yes? What if you gave yourself permission to check in with your own heart first? What if kindness toward others also included kindness toward yourself? That small pause can completely change the direction of a conversation. Instead of reacting automatically, you begin responding intentionally. And intentional responses build healthier relationships, not weaker ones. Because people are no longer interacting with a version of you that exists only to maintain comfort. They are interacting with someone real, someone present, someone emotionally grounded, and something beautiful happens when you start living this way. Your mind becomes quieter, your body becomes calmer, your relationships become more authentic, because honesty creates stability. If you recognize yourself in the pattern of people-pleasing, there is no reason to judge yourself. You simply learned a strategy that once helped you navigate relationships. Now you are learning something better, something healthier, something more sustainable. You are learning how to care about people without disappearing inside their expectations, and that shift can change the entire emotional direction of your life. The next time someone asks something of you, try something simple. Pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself one honest question. What do I actually feel about this? That moment of awareness creates space for wisdom. And wisdom is where emotional maturity truly begins. Because kindness that includes yourself is the kind of kindness that actually lasts. And if this reflection helped you see something about your own patterns today, remember this. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to learn new ways of living. You are allowed to love people deeply without losing your own voice. Real peace is not found in always saying yes. Sometimes, real peace begins the moment you finally say no. If this reflection spoke to something inside you, remember this. You are not alone in what you carry. Many people walk through life quietly holding more than others can see. Pressure, responsibility, expectations. But faith was never meant to make life heavier. Faith was meant to remind you that you do not have to carry everything alone. So take a slow breath, allow your mind to rest for a moment, and remember that peace does not begin when life becomes perfect. Peace begins when the heart learns to trust. If this message helped you today, subscribe to this channel for more reflections on emotional clarity through faith. And if you feel comfortable, share in the comments what this season of your life has been teaching you. Sometimes the most powerful step toward healing is simply knowing you are not walking alone.